My name's Randall. For those of you who don't know me, I am an elder here at the church, and our family's been coming for the last 4 years, I think. It's always an honor to be able to speak and also assist Gavin and Libby, who isn't here today, just alleviate the burden of speaking off of them. Being able to do that a couple times a year I'm thankful that I can help in that way. So, to start, we're going to watch a clip from a movie, a favorite of mine, called Gladiator. And it was a movie that, it won a number of Academy Awards. But if you've never seen it, a small synopsis of what's led up to the scene we're about to watch is the main character, Maximus. He's a Roman general at the start of the movie. There's an old emperor, and he has one son, and the emperor doesn't want to pass the Roman Empire off to his son. He doesn't believe in his son. His son is, just corrupted. He's selfish, not the visionary leader that Marcus Aurelius wants to pass his empire off to. And so his hope is to pass it off to the people again, to make Rome a republic, as the story goes. None of this is based in a lot of history. Like, the names are historical, but that's about it. So Maximus, the emperor, realizes or tells his son this, and his son proceeds to kill the emperor, his father. And Maximus flees and is, stripped of his titles in the Roman Empire and becomes a slave, essentially, but he ends up being a gladiator. And because of his military training, he's a really good gladiator. And he rises to popularity in the Roman Empire and fights in the Colosseum. Now, Maximus also knows the sister of the emperor, the new emperor. And they are plotting to take back Rome from Commodus, the emperor. And, the plot doesn't succeed, and the emperor finds out, and so he now is confronting his sister in this scene.
It's done. And what of my nephew? And what of his mother? Should they share her lover's fate? Or should I be merciful? Commodus the Merciful. Lucius will stay with me now. And if his mother so much as looks at me in a manner that displeases me, you will die. If she decides to be noble and takes her own life, you will die. And as for you, you will love me as I loved you. You will provide me with an heir of pure blood, so that Commodus and his progeny will rule for 1,000 years. Am I not merciful? Am I not merciful?
Hey, you can see why he won Best Actor for that. Messed up part of empires throughout history is that they would keep royal bloodlines in the family, and so he's talking about marrying his own sister and her providing an heir. Aside from that, Did that look like mercy to you? We'll keep exploring the idea as we go here. But our scripture reading for today is from the Sermon on the Mount. If you were to open your table of contents to the Bible and you find the New Testament, the very first book in the New Testament is the Gospel of Matthew. And in chapter 5, it's been titled, kind of the subtitle. The original authors didn't give them these titles, but we, to help us find them and navigate our way through Scripture, give these titles of the Sermon on the Mount. And in verse 5, I'll read for us. When Jesus saw the crowds, he went up to the mountain. And after he sat down, his disciples came to him, and he opened his mouth and began to teach them, saying, Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they shall be comforted. Blessed are the gentle, for they shall inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they shall see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God. Blessed are those who have been persecuted for the sake of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And blessed are you when people insult you and persecute you and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me. Rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. This small selection of verses here is what we call Beatitudes. So they're a literary form that we can find them in Scripture, and they would be in other ancient literary forms. But these Beatitudes in the Gospel of Matthew, and we find them right in chapter 5, but if we were to encompass the entire Sermon on the Mount, chapters 6 and 7, they are ethics. They are teachings on how people of Christ's kingdom, Christ's followers, should act. They're markers. So Beatitudes, though, we can find them elsewhere in the Old Testament. And it has a literary form, do A, and, you shall, or be. You will have be. So in Psalm chapter 1, 1 through 3, oh, the joys of those who do. So happy are those, the joys of those who do not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand around with sinners, or join in with mockers. But they delight in the law of the Lord, for they prosper in all they do. So Jesus teaches this on a mountain. I wonder why we're going in and out here. But I kind of imagine it's more comparable to like how in Hamilton they call it a mountain, the escarpment. Unlike the mountains that Gavin just came from, where they're actual mountains with snow on them. There's a parallel. Maybe I should just go to the handheld. I don't know if that'll make it better or not. There's a parallel that I'd never seen before, but as I was kind of studying and looking into the Beatitudes and Matthew 5, that Jesus is going up on this mountain and he's teaching and he's giving us not commandments, but ways to live, markers for how his kingdom is going to be. Where Moses on Mount Sinai came down from Mount Sinai, God had given him commandments on how his people, how the kingdom of Israel was going to be. And we have the rest of Moses' books as he's following the people as they expand on what those 10 commandments are. Now, some people, when they've talked about the Beatitudes, when you talk about the Sermon on the Mount, there's some debate amongst Christians about, are they meant to be taken literally? How literal do you take them? So the Mennonite tradition takes them very literally. These are Jesus' words. He is telling us how to live. And so Mennonites will look at the passage where Jesus says in the Sermon on the Mount, you've heard it said, take an eye for an eye. If you've had some injustice against you, then you do it back to them of equal value, a tooth for a tooth. Where Jesus said, I say to you, if you've been struck on the cheek, then turn the other cheek. So Mennonites have taken that and said, well, we aren't to fight. We are never to raise a fist a hand, a gun to anyone. And so they won't fight in war. They won't do it. Now, others in the church will say, no, that's just for the individual. We need to stand up against tyranny. But it's not just tyranny. There's military and serving in the military, and you justify it. So there is debate. But I would argue that these are a biblical lens in which we are to view this world. These are the way that we are to live and act. So I remember fretting in my life at different points. One of those points was I'd finished high school, and where was I to go to university? And I wanted God to just tell me where I need to go. Where do you have me destined to go? And I didn't at the time, and you know what? God didn't answer. He didn't say, just open the Bible and you will find the place you're to go. No, he didn't say that. And eventually I just had to make a decision, and I didn't have the words for why Jesus didn't answer me. And eventually I've come to learn that God isn't so concerned with every detail of our lives, even the big details, in the sense of what we choose. Sometimes he's not really concerned about where we choose to work, as long as we are following this roadmap of how we are to live. If you are practicing what's in the Beatitudes, if you are practicing what's in the Sermon on the Mount, no matter what you're doing, you are living out God's fulfillment. You are living out His kingdom, where He wants you to be. And so these are the biblical lens in which we're to view the world. Now today I want to focus on one of the Beatitudes, and it's, blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Now we could do a whole sermon series on a number of these things, on all the different Beatitudes. But today we're going to focus on mercy. So what is mercy? Sorry, let me move forward here. Mercy is compassion shown towards someone who has committed a wrong or is subject to one's power. So to give mercy, you must have power over that person. So if they have wronged you, you have mercy, you have power over them because they have done something against you, and you could choose to forgive, you could choose to let go, or you could choose to hold that against them, and depending on the injustice that was done against you. Mercy is also for those who have just power and influence. So Commodus was an emperor. He had power over the entire Roman Empire. Any decision he made could change the lives of millions of people. And so an emperor has the ability to give out mercy. And mercy is supposed to be how Jesus' kingdom is different from the world's kingdoms. Because Commodus' mercy towards his sister was not mercy at all. She wouldn't have had a life. She would have been a slave, essentially, not free. Mercy sets one free from that power you have over them. To understand some of the power dynamics in our world, I first wanted to explore a little bit of how that works in our world, because the perception of power is different to everybody. My wife and I, and Nicole, taught a little bit about and referenced this author in the sermon she preached a few months ago. And we've been just trying to read numerous books from this author, Jonathan Haidt, and this book in particular, The Coddling of the American Mind, was written also by Greg Lukianoff. And the subtitle of it is How Good Intentions and Bad Ideas Are Setting Up a Generation for Failure. So part of this book, they identify 3 untruths, they're calling them, that are becoming pervasive in our culture, especially with the young people that they were observing between 2012, 2013 to 2018 when they had finished publishing this book. Now, we're just going to look at one of the untruths. I highly recommend reading this book if you have the time. It's a really good book and very insightful for just our culture. So we're going to focus on the one particular untruth they talk about is the untruth of us versus them. So in it, they historically look at identity politics. So identity politics are how human beings have arranged themselves for millennia. We arrange ourselves sometimes through race, sometimes through religion or your creed, gender, age, geography, your culture. And people have always seen this, and there can be good elements of this, there can be bad and negative elements. One of the examples of something good about identity politics that they pointed out was Martin Luther King. So when he, as a minister, as a black man, was trying to fight and earn the freedom of black people, the rights of black people in America, what he appealed to everybody was our common humanity, the common identity that we are all created equal under God. And so that's a gender or an identity politics that goes beyond just one specific thing, and it reaches everybody. He wasn't trying to have a world separated by black and white people and Asian people. He wanted a world where we were all seen as equal. But Jonathan and Greg, in their book, they identify a new trend that's been developing in our culture and globally. They're specifically focused on the States in theirs, but we can see it in Canada, you can see it in Europe. And it's a common enemy identity politics. How this differs from identity politics is not just gathering around with people of some likeness, but instead it's adopting a framework of those who have power and those who do not, those who are privileged and those who are oppressed. And what happens when you start to develop that, you start to create enemies. Life becomes, in the book, they say life is a battle between good people and evil people. That's what this untruth begins to lead to. Us versus them. It's those who are good, those who think correctly, etc., and those who don't, those who are on the opposite side of the spectrum, are evil people. Now, these guys, I kind of added this in because I think they were going there a little bit, but it wasn't the focus of their book. But if your world begins to be filled with evil people, enemies, and good people, those who you are aligned with, it becomes a lot easier to hate people. That when you have power over people, you begin to hate. Now, we have a culture filled with power narratives. And structure and order and electing governments is something humans have been doing for thousands of years. Because small groups, we have a paid staff, we have board and elders right here in our church, and you can perceive it as power, and it depends on how the people adopt it, but it's how we can structure and organize ourselves so we can accomplish more. And humans have been doing that forever, but with that comes a temptation, and all people have it, is a desire for power. Now, some of you may have just a smidgen of it, and some of you may have a lot of it. But there's that temptation. And we have power narratives right in the culture. Politically, we have a left and right divide. And it's sometimes divided pretty hard. But here's the problem if we think... Oh, I mashed a button there. Yeah, we're right here. If your framework, if we go back to, if now life is a battle between good people and evil people, when we start to put a lens on of politics, we just elected a new government here, but if we have a lens that says the right, if you're right aligned, the left is evil. We're the good ones. If you're on the left and you say, well, I'm right, we're good, the right is evil, That doesn't make sense. I mean, all of you have family, cousins, neighbors, whatever, who have voted left or right or whatever. Those are the people we're supposed to love. But if the framework of our world has become now that those who are on the left, well, if I'm on the right, they're my enemy. And we could see it. We see it in our social media feeds. We see it in the temptation, and I see it on YouTube stuff. You click on one right or left-leaning video, and then the algorithm populates a whole bunch of others for you. And all of a sudden, you're down the road of just like rage farming social media pundits who are just, all they want is your view, so they're just going to say whatever they want. But that's what they're doing. They're farming your rage. They're farming your anger because that gets the most clicks. But it changes the way we think and see the world. Socially, some people in our world are trying to train us how to think of if you're on one side or the other. Are you privileged? The term white privilege has been thrown around a lot in the last it's only like 5 years. But it's based on this divide of race. It doesn't even have meaning anymore, the term, but it just gets thrown around there as a blanket, uneducated way, I think now, of just explaining an injustice we see in the world of some kind. Socially, your creed, gender identity, those things can become power narratives if we let them. Economically, whether you're rich or poor, do you have connections in the business world to be able to get a job pretty quickly if you find yourself unemployed? Whether you're an owner or an employee, there's power dynamics there. See, my fear is what happens is that the lenses that we've begun to be influenced by, and we all are influenced by them, is that instead of being able to now listen to what the other side is saying, we are told that if people are not with you, they're against you. And we stop listening to what they're saying because, well, we're right, we're good, and you're wrong, you're evil. Nelson Mandela, I was too young to follow it in the news when it was actually happening. But South Africa, apartheid, where there was true animosity, anger, and violence between white and black people. And he said, when we dehumanize and demonize our opponents, we abandon the possibility of peacefully resolving our differences and seek to justify violence against them. Our world's filled with power dynamics. And yet Jesus calls us to mercy. And so Jesus gives us a parable in the Gospel of Luke. Parable that many of you have maybe read this, maybe heard it preached on numerous times, and some of you at least have heard the term a Good Samaritan. Well, what is it? What's that from? So I'm going to read the passage to you first. Jesus is responding to somebody who asked him how, I think it was how to get into the kingdom of heaven, but in reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. In this story, we have three individuals who come across the beaten man. First is the priest. The Priests in Jewish society, they are the holy ones. They are set apart for God's special service in the temple. Now, a priest was also to avoid, especially a priest, was to avoid. They needed to be, they wanted to be clean and ready to serve the Lord. And so any person in Jewish society, when they interacted with a dead person, they would become unclean, and they would need to go through the purification rituals that they had. That may have been the law, but it didn't excuse anyone from actually helping somebody who was beaten near to death. But the priest, not sure if the man was alive or dead, decided to go on the other side of the road and walk by. Did he hear a moan, or did he assume he was dead? We don't know. The Levite. So the Levites, when Israel was given the land of, when the nation of Israel was given the land of their land, the promised land, when they entered, the Levites weren't actually given any territory within that. So all the other clans, they received land to farm and build cities and stuff, but the Levites had special cities that they were designated to live in. They were the special clan that would be serving the priesthood. And so they had very similar rules to the priests. And once again, the Levite walks on by, despite knowing that if somebody is hurt, they still have an obligation to help them. One of the things I would say here is if you ever tried to read through the Old Testament, especially like the laws that Moses gives, I won't lie, it's not a page turner. But if you read them, you will see that built within those laws, there are laws of mercy built within. Laws of mercy to help the oppressed. Laws of mercy to help the hungry. Farmers were not supposed to harvest the crops right next to roads and paths. They were to leave bits of grain right along the side so that passerbys, those who were hungry, could take some and eat as they went. And there are other examples if you were to read it. So finally we get to the Samaritan. Now, who is the Samaritan? The Samaritans, if you know your Old Testament history, so I'm not going to assume you all do. At the end of King Solomon's reign, what happened to the kingdom of Israel? The kingdom of Israel was divided in two. There was a rift. And so there became a northern kingdom and a southern kingdom. And they both had their own kingship lines. Now, God was getting pretty fed up with the Israelites towards the end in these kingdoms. They were looking like the world's kingdom is not the kingdom that God had called them to be. And so the Assyrian Empire first conquered the northern kingdom. I don't know. They weren't able to conquer the southern kingdom where Jerusalem was. They conquered the north. So the northern kingdom is what eventually, 700 years later, became the Samaritans. And they didn't like each other, the Jews and the Samaritans. They hated each other. There was great animosity between them. And so Jesus, though, uses this as the very example of the person who is giving mercy, extending mercy to his enemy. Culturally, that's his enemy. He may not be extended the same mercy if it was the other way. But he saw a beaten man on the path and he helped him. And so Jesus' audience would be shocked, frustrated, offended by such a parable. Especially since it would be offending not only just the average Jew, but it would be offending the priests and the Levites. So where does it leave us today for mercy? We have different power dynamics. Each of us in our own scenarios are given opportunities daily to show and extend mercy to others around us. And so I can't give you a one-off, this is what you should do, and then you've solved it. It's an ongoing work of where God has placed you and And just working with God to just help you see. Putting on the lens of the Beatitudes and saying, God, how do I see this better? 2 weeks ago, Pope Francis died. And he was a very interesting person to follow and read about. I occasionally would read articles about him. And I'm not Catholic, obviously. I mean, I don't agree with everything they theologically they teach. But there are literally hundreds of millions of people who are Catholics. And it was it would have been a very sad time for many of them. But one of the things that struck me about Pope Francis, I remember when he became the Pope, is how he acted with such a reverence and humility to the title. Like, can you imagine the power and influence that he has in this world? Influence that spreads into many, many countries. What he says goes. Like those churches, if he created a new teaching, they would have to adopt it. That's how powerful the Pope is. And yet here was a man, when he first became Pope, if I remember correctly, as he was becoming, he actually stopped to wash the feet of people the day he became Pope. And one of the things he's known as is the Pope of Mercy. And here's one thing that is what I do admire about him, is that you can look at the time before he was Pope and the time while he was Pope. He cared about the oppressed. Truly the oppressed. Not the oppressed that we have created, that media has created for us, but the oppressed of those who are poor and downtrodden, those who are widows, those who are in prison. He said, a little bit of mercy makes the world less cold and more just. And I give him as an example because the church is filled with all kinds of people who've had power. You can Google mega church pastors who have fallen from grace. It's a long, long list. And some of them it's because of their sinfulness. But some of them it's just because they were just awful people who held on to their power too long or abused the power that they were given by others. So who has the power to extend mercy? Jesus' story tells us that any one of us does. His parable is not an example of like, well, I just will extend mercy when I see someone beaten on the side of the road, and I'll help them then. We need to fight our culture's teaching that our world is divided into us and them. Because it's not. God, John 3:16, for God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son. The world. So what Jesus is calling us to do as a church, as individuals, is to live out the ethics that he has laid out for us. No matter what situation and vocation that you are in, he calls us to live that out every day. And remove the temptations that are in your life. And I think this is the application, is if you are being influenced by a social media thing that makes you feel ill towards somebody else, makes you lean towards hating those people. And some of us say, I'll never hate. Sure. But if it makes you feel like they're your enemy, well, Jesus said we still have to love them. We're still called to it. Because what I've experienced here in this church is that there is a great love for this community that we're in. I've been helping out at the junior youth. Most of the year we had 10 or 12 kids. By the time we were at the end, there was 20 plus kids coming every week. And 3/4 of those kids don't come to this church. and don't really go to church. Most of them didn't know anything about the Bible, and sometimes you would hear grumblings. Do we really have to do a Bible lesson? Can't we just play games the whole time? We're like, well, yeah, it's a free program, so you're going to sit and listen to a Bible program. Because this is my time, Pastor Libby's time, Fletcher's time, Julie's. I don't know if she's here, but that's our time as leaders. We're sacrificing that time for you. Now, they don't see that. They just see it as fun and games. But I'm excited because there are so many kids in this town now who see our church as a safe place to be. See our church where they can come and they can play games, they can make friends, they can learn from adults who aren't their parents that invest in them and pour in them. And that's an extension of mercy. Sometimes the school is not a safe place for them. It's not fun for them. Maybe home isn't always fun for them. But we can at least create a space that's fun for them here. And we have that in our senior youth. We have that in our day camp. We are a church that cares about our community. And it's a way that we can extend that mercy so that, we have this ethics to live by. And that's what the world measures us by. The world knows that we're supposed to be loving. We're supposed to be merciful and caring. And when we're not, they see it. It gives them reasons not to come to church. And it doesn't mean we agree with everything that the world is. Of course we don't. But we still got to love them. And that's where we can continue to create this space where people can come in and be loved, be cared for. All right, let's pray. Jesus, thank you. Thank you for how hard it is to live out your message. And yet, is it a message that, as we live it out, it changes the world, it changes lives? Thank you that there are people in this world that we can look to say they have showed us how to demonstrate mercy or showed us how to demonstrate love, forgiveness. Thank you for those individuals. Jesus, I just pray that us as a church would be a place where we can continue to show mercy and grace to our community, that we can help those who feel downtrodden and oppressed, and that they would feel welcome to enter our church and get to know you. Father, I pray you would bless us. Amen.